Webite bounce rate, what does it mean, and should you worry about it? Marketing intelligence quiz. When looking at website visit data, what is a bounce rate? The number of visits that don't last long enough to gather data, the number of visits to one page, only the number of pages on your website that are viewed for less than 1 second, the number of times you bang your head against your keyboard in frustration with your website. There is a correct answer. And number 2, is it duh? If you've heard people talking about their Google Analytics, they may well mention bounce rate. This metric gets a chart of its own in the Google Analytics program. It's supposed to help measure content quality. The theory is, the more pages and the longer the visit, the better the site is serving its audience, but there's a problem with the common definition of bounce rate. Google defines bounce rate as the percentage of single-page visits or visits in which the person left your site from the entrance, landing, page. If you're like me, something looks very wrong with this definition. What about time? Google doesn't tell you how long a visit is before it counts as a visit. Not a bounce. A 2-minute visit, even if it's to one page, shows a lot more engagement than a 2-second visit. But does Google count both as a bounce? Wikipedia defines bounce rate this way. A bounce occurs when a website visitor only views a single page on a website, that is, the visitor leaves a site without visiting any other pages. Clicky is another web analytics service. It openly defines its bounce rate with a time factor. A visitor who has only one page view, and who is on your site for less than 30 seconds is what we now consider a bounce. We can conclude true fact from all this: there is no one standard way to define a bounce. So it turns out, experts don't have universal agreement on what counts as a bounce. Bounce rate isn't an absolute measure of how good or bad your site is. It's relative to what's normal for your site. You have to decide what a realistic bounce rate is for your website, and look at how that changes over time as your site changes. How much should we worry about short visits from people? Short visits are the norm for most web pages. It's normal for people to glance quickly over a page. They're skimming for signs in headings, images, subheads that the site is likely to have what they want. They seek meaning at a glance that confirms your content will answer their need, and that your site looks easy to use. Pass this inspection, and you've got a better chance of keeping your visitors for a longer visit or a second click. People follow the path of least resistance. Sites that look hard to use or that obscure their content too much find visitors quickly leaving for easier paths. A certain number of bounces reflect a healthy no. They are from people who came by mistake or who really don't want what you're in business for. You might have a higher bounce rate than average for your industry if your business name is easily confused with another by a similar name. For example, I know of 2 businesses that use the same basic keyword in their business name and URL. It's 5 characters that mean one thing on site A and another thing on site B. The shared 5-character string means that both sites are going to appear high in search results for that search term. Both are going to get some traffic from people who click one by mistake, when what they want is on the other one. A fairly high bounce rate for these 2 sites is going to be normal. When should you worry about your bounce rate? It's time to worry about short visits if another measure is also low. The low number to worry about is conversions. You need to have a way to tell if people are finding what they came for. Visitor conversion rate is a good way to measure it. A conversion is the change in your relationship with your visitor from one category to a more desired one. A visitor who signs up to get your free download or newsletter has converted. This visitor changed from a source of data in your web traffic counter to a subscriber, with an email address and permission for you to contact them. When you convert an unknown guest into one you can reach by email, you can count this event. When someone signs up, they should see a thank you page used just for this purpose. The count of times you see the thank you page in your web traffic analysis tells you how many conversions you have from visitors into a subscribers or prospects. If you have no way to measure conversions, you have a real problem. You are working blindfolded. You have no way of knowing what % of our visitors find you a good match for what they need. It's going to be much harder for you to tell if your money and time invested in your website is paying off. You can tell if you're well aligned with what your visitor wants if you can count the actions they take to get it. Learning your conversion rate requires you to set up a goal page counter in your web analytics or visit counter program. Conversion rate is not a number you get automatically by using a traffic counter, as bounce rate is you have to set up your traffic counter to know which page counts as a conversion. Once you do, your system can do the math. Your analytics program tells you the conversion rate as number of goal page views / number of visitors. When you start to see more people going to your goal page, you have a good sign that the benefit you're offering is a good match for what people want. By itself, bounce rate isn't an absolute measure of how well you capture visitor interest. Bounce rate isn't meaningful alone until you can measure something else too. If you are doing more publicity and marketing, and your bounce rate stays the same or gets even worse, that's one sign your content may be hurting you more than it's helping. If your conversion rate is low, that's a good indication your message is off and it's time to rethink the content and presentation on your website.